That was me.
So before we start, if anyone is not muted, could you do that now? And then later when we get to the Q&A, you'll have to remember to unmute yourself when you ask a question. And if you've forgotten, you'll see all of us waving at you. So that's how you should interpret that waving. So I want to welcome everybody. This is our first chapter meeting of 2025. We don't meet in January. And it's like good that we're really not meeting in person today either, because it's freezing here in New York City. I want to make sure that everybody has the accommodations they need. Captions should be easily available by clicking on the bottom where it says CC. If you want stream text captions, which you can get on a separate screen, the link is in the chat. We also have captions in Spanish, and I think that link is also in the chat. So just a little bit of business before we begin. One is I want to thank Marjorie Nathanson, and I want to suggest that everybody go to the news and views that was sent out the other day, because she's the first contributor to a new feature we have in news and views, which is chapter members telling their own stories in their own words. And Marjorie's is a great example of the approach. So it doesn't have to be your hearing loss story. It can be an anecdote. It can be, it's just, we thought it was a way while we're still on Zoom for us to have a little bit more personal contact and get to know each other. I also want to mention, I'm speaking now for the State Association. There is our New York State Association has an initiative to require open captions in movie theaters, which is similar to what we already have in New York City. We got that 4 years ago. They asked if hello. Okay. Somebody is going to put in the chat a link to the bill numbers and also a way to find out the name of your state senator. If you're not a New York resident, this doesn't apply to you because it's for constituents. So write to your own state senator. David, are you able to put that into the chat?
Yes, it'll take me a moment. I'll have it in 30 seconds.
Okay. And the two bills are S2269 for the Senate and A4628. And when you email, do say you're a constituent, and they also suggest that we follow up with phone calls. Phone calls seem to be getting more attention these days than emails. So when you do call, give your name and say that you're a constituent. So thank you to the state chapter for taking this on. The Find Your Senator should be in the chat now. It's a very easy link. If it's not there, you just fill in Find Your Senator. We have, I think, although I haven't had a chance to really look at the whole group here, but I think we have members of HLAA's virtual veterans chapter here. And I think that link, I know that link is already in the chat, and welcome to all of them. We'll also have someone from the virtual veterans chapter speaking, and Lisa will introduce him when we get to that point. But welcome to all of you, and welcome to any others of you who have not already been part of our chapter meetings. We're very glad to have you here. So I'm going to introduce Lisa because we want to give her as much time as possible. Most of you know her. If you spend any time at HLA, you know her as the Director of Public Policy. She retired from HLA in 2024 after 16 years, 16 very successful years of legislative successes. So thank you, Lisa, for that. She has a long history of advocating for the rights of people with hearing loss, starting with her work here in New York City at the Center for Hearing and Communication. That was in the late 1990s. She has served on industry, consumer, and federal.
Hold on a sec.
providing presentations. Hello? Okay. She's provided presentations since she's worked directly with people with hearing loss to help advocate for change. She's here tonight to talk to us about service animals. She has her own service dog, who I'm sure she will tell you about, and who we're hoping will make a guest appearance. She has a significant bilateral hearing loss herself, which is what qualifies her for a trained hearing service dog. Her dog's name is Shine, and he came from Canine Companions for Independence. And I believe we have a representative from Canine Companions for Independence here as part of our meeting. Shine is a Black Lab Golden Retriever mix, and he was trained to help alert at least to specific sounds. So Lisa, I'm going to turn this over to you, and if everyone hold their questions until after the presentation. We will have a short interruption of Lisa's presentation while Steve Curry comes in and talks, and then we'll go in onto questions. So to ask a question, I'm just going to say this now, go to, I'll have to think about that. It's changed on the bottom of my screen here. I'll say where we're going to go to once we're ready for questions. So Lisa, I'm going to turn this over to you, and thank you so much and welcome everybody.
Thank you, Catherine. I'm happy to be here and see so many familiar faces this evening. I'm going to share my screen so you can see my slides. Hold on a second. Okay, so that's me. And that is Shine. And Shine, Black. Good girl. This is Shine. She's my Black Lab. She'll do anything for kibble. But lap is one of the things that they train dogs to do. So that's Shine. She wants another one. Shine, come back. Shine, lap. One more, and that's enough treats for her. Good girl. So yes, so Shine and I were partnered by Canine Companions for Independence in 2021. She's actually, at that point, was 2 years old. She was born in 2019, which is what I was about to say. So she was, she's been a terrific asset to my life. I've loved having her around. She's helpful in more ways than one, and that I'll go into that. I'm also going to talk a little bit about the law, the Americans with Disabilities Act, and I'll touch on the Air Carrier Access Act, all in terms of service animals only. We'll talk about everything that has to do with both laws, but this is to give you a little bit of an overview for people who are thinking about maybe getting a dog for themselves, applying to have a service dog for themselves. The idea is to give you a little bit of information about that. And the other thing I want to make really clear is I am retired from HLAA. HLAA is still part of my life in terms of my chapter, and I'm happy to be here for you guys. But I do not represent HLAA at this point. I'm representing me as a consumer who has a hearing dog. Also, I will talk a lot about Canine Companions, but I'm not representing them either. It's just the organization that provided me with the dog and that has helped me. And subsequent, they not only provide you with a dog and you go through the training, but they also help you after the fact. So they've been a wonderful organization, and I'm happy to be able to share information again, but I'm not an official from either organization. I'm just my own consumer these days. So let's jump right in. I'm going to talk first about the Americans with Disabilities Act and how it works dealing with, again, just service animals. That's what I'm going to look at. I also want to mention the website ada.gov is a terrific site. It's easy to get through, and it has a lot of information about the Americans with Disabilities Act. And I looked at it just this afternoon. afternoon to make sure it's still there. And yes, it is. It's there, and you can still get the information you need. So the first thing I wanted to say is how does the Americans with Disabilities Act define a service animal? And this is what it is. It's a dog that is individually trained to do work or perform tasks for a person with disabilities. Again, you can look at the definition of what is a person with disabilities is in the overall act. You have to be a qualified person with a disability. You have to have something that affects some part of life. And certainly hearing is one of the disabilities that is considered protected under the Americans with Disabilities Act. Now, it used to be there were a number of different kinds of animals that were considered, that could be considered a service animal. And at one point, even miniature ponies were considered a service animal. But it became more restricted. And as of 2011, only dogs are recognized under the ADA as a service animal under Title II, which has to do with state and local government, and Title III, which is public places of public accommodation. Now, these organizations, plus nonprofit organizations, businesses, they must allow service animals in places that are generally available to other people. Anybody, if you're allowing public in to serve them as state and local government or as a public place, then the service animal is also allowed under the ADA to go there. However, the dog must be under the control of its handler. And you see in this picture that this woman is controlling the dog with the leash. Now, that's one way to define it, but the dog also can't be aggressive, can't be barking, inappropriate barking. In some cases, they can bark if it's an alert for hearing people. Hearing dogs do not, they nudge, they do not bark. But it can't be out of control, jumping up and doing things that they're not supposed to be doing. So that's part of the definition. So you can't go into, for example, I've taken Shine to a play. If she were making noise or making other people uncomfortable in an aggressive way, not just because she was there, but it was aggressive, then I could be asked to leave. She's a good girl, and she stayed through the whole play, even though it was a little bit noisy for her. Now, a public place can ask questions. They can say, is this dog required because of a disability? Or what work or task has the dog been trained to do? So I took Shine to a museum one time. And when I walked in, the guards were not happy to see me. And the reason for that is not that they look askance to service animals. The reason is that there are a number of people now who go online, will get a vest for a service animal. It says service animal on it, only it's not trained. So again, a pup or a pet might not be trained at all to be in public places, and so they shouldn't be there. So they ask these questions. So that when I explained to the guard at the museum, she was immediately, once she understood that I really understood what the law was and I really understood what this dog was trained for and why, then she allowed me in and we were fine. And Shine behaved herself, so she was a good girl. Now, that's just really a quick overview of the ADA. I know a lot of people here also know the ADA really well, but if you have questions, we can deal with that later at the end of the presentation. The other thing I really thought was important to mention is the Air Carriers Access Act. And that's the website for that. The Air Carrier Access Act was enacted in 1986. So now we're talking a few years before the ADA in 1990. So the provisions of the Air Carrier Access Act are slightly different, not quite the same. They mirror each other, but they're not all the same. So when you're going on an airplane, you're really dealing with a different law when you work with the airlines that take your tickets. So for ACAA, an Air a service animal also means a dog. And in this case, airlines for a while were taking any animal at all, thinking that any animal had to be almost any animal at all, thinking they should be accepting it. But that changed also recently when the air carriers came to the Department of Transportation and said, look, this is not tenable. We can't have turkeys on board. And they changed they changed the rules to allow for that. But again, they have to be trained and they have to perform a task that is beneficial to the individual with a disability. Now, here are the animals they do not want on the plane. So no other species than a dog, emotional support animals, comfort animals, companionship animals, and service animals in training. That's the picture I have here of the cute little puppy who's in training, but they're not allowing them apparently on board. However, in that case, I would want to check. Sometimes the airlines have a certain amount of discretion to allow a service animal to be transported from one place to another. So that's the kind of thing, there's a certain amount of discretion by the airline, but the transportation, Department of Transportation says, no, they don't have to take these animals. This is what you do need to know about also. When you go on a plane, and I have gone on a plane with Shine, I fill out this form. Now, this form requires that so I have it with me. They have certain questions that they ask, and you have to attest to. And you say to the Department of Transportation form, but who you give it to is in check-in. You check in where you check your bag or you check in at the airport, and you must check in. You can't just bypass it by going to a kiosk. You must check in when you have a service animal. And you provide this form, and the form asks questions like who the animal is, the name of the handler, you're attesting that they don't have fleas, you're attesting their behavior will be okay. And then you're attesting that also that they can be harnessed or leashed or tethered at all times, that you're in control of the dog. And if there's any problem, you are responsible for it. So they could charge a fee if, for example, it does any destruction, something like that. That form you fill out, you say, I swear I'll do this. You give it a check-in. They check that in and put it on your ticket. And by the way, when you do book a plane, you should also always put that I have a disability. I have a hearing disability, and often it's just deaf, but that's okay. Then I also, if I'm traveling with Shine, I put down right on when I'm booking the plane. And sometimes you have to search a little bit depending on which airline it is, but be sure you check off that you want to bring your service dog too. But they'll look at this form and they'll say, fine. If you just show up with it, it makes it more difficult to get through the process. I haven't tried it, but I believe it would be harder or slower. The other form that's new, this one's new. This one I haven't used for two reasons. One is I believe this was put in place after the last year. So it's been recent enough that I haven't flown with Shine. But the other reason is that I've never traveled with Shine for 8 hours or more hours. What this form is all about saying, I'm going to take the animal for 8 hours or more. I can tell you that the dog will be able to handle it, will not relieve himself or herself on the plane. That's what it's about. So it's new, but again, if you're traveling that long and far, then you should bring this with you because they'll ask for it. And again, check with the airlines. Some airlines request, this is a baseline so that airlines can go above and beyond, but they can ask for this. They're allowed to. Okay, so when can they say, no, we're not going to take this dog? Well, if they violate any of the safety requirements, so the dog could be too heavy. Shine, you saw Shine, she's about 60 pounds now. There are dogs that I've seen a giant Schnauzer that is massive. I don't know if they would take her on a plane or not, but it has been trained to be a service animal. So it's a question you want to know for sure you could take that dog on a plane. Other reasons is it might pose a direct threat to other people, their safety. Again, snapping, biting, they can deny you access. That's happening at the gate. They can deny you getting on the plane. Or if they cause significant disruption, or if there's violation of health requirements. So all of that, they can say, no, you cannot come on. The other question I looked at is something that I have not done myself with Sean. I've not taken her overseas. And part of that is because I don't know for sure. I'm always a little unsure what the laws are in the other countries I might visit. So you can investigate that. You can make sure that, what if there's a quarantine law that you have to keep the dog quarantined for a certain amount of time, or coming back, depending on where you go, will the dog have to be in quarantine? What if there are other rules? So my suggestion for that, you can travel, but you should check first. And some of the ways some of the things that might be asked were to update their vaccinations. Maybe rabies is a big one. Any kind of vaccinations, they must be sure that they're up to date. Parasitic treatments, they don't want to come on with fleas or ticks. Microchips. Now, Canine Companions gives you a dog with a microchip, but if you've gotten it from some other organization, then they may not, and you might need to do it yourself. And then I did see in some cases, COVID, some countries asked for the dog to be tested for COVID. So all of that depends your lifestyle now without a service animal. You have certain things that you want to do that you can do. One of my friends came to me and said, gee, I'd like to travel overseas. Should I get a service dog? And I said, well, think about it, because you'll have to think about these kinds of restrictions all the time. Are you ready for that? So are you ready for the change to your life and what you want to do? You also have to, there's a certain commitment. One of the reasons that service animals are going out with their partner all the time, so public places, on the plane, whatever it is because there's a bonding that happens between the animal and the partner. And the more time you spend, the more you increase the surety of that bond. So you're not going out in public just for the fun of it. It's because it really increases your ability to work together. And I can tell you too, when I go out and about with Shine, I am much more alert. She alerts me to sounds she hasn't even been trained to, because she is aware of her environment. So it has helped me in multiple situations, but that bond must be strengthened and used all the time. So when you apply for a dog, they're going to ask you, or they did at Canine Companions. Again, I can't speak for every organization in the world, but Canine asks you, can you demonstrate how that animal would benefit you, how you would benefit from any kind of service dog, and they ask facility organizations that want facility dogs, the same thing. What will it do for you? How will it be beneficial? And you want to make sure you have the means and resources to manage and care for the dog. Up front, there's going to be trips to the vet, there's going to be feeding and grooming and exercising. There has to be a license, vaccinations, treatments, all of this is going to be part of the package. But sometimes there are surprises. So when Shine came to me, she was a healthy young pup, 2 years old. She looked good. Everything was fine. And then that fall, I got her in summer. And fall, she developed very tough ear infections. And I say tough because it was tough once it got started. It was really bad. And it was it's hard to stop. I take her to the vet. She'd go through medications and I take her back. And it was back and forth. And she went through this several times. Finally, the vet said to me, this is beginning to look like she might have an allergy. I said, oh. And I called K9 and they said, no, they didn't show any sign of allergies. So the next thing the vet says is, well, the only way to really know for sure is to get her tested. To get her tested costs $1,000. So I was like, this was a surprise. But that's the kind of thing that happens sometimes. A dog, even though she looks beautiful and young and healthy, can sometimes develop an allergy. So when we got her tested, as it turned out, Shine is allergic to cats. When I had Shine in my home, I had a cat. That cat has since passed, so no more cats to be allergic to. But who knew? I had told canine companions that I wanted her to be able to be with a cat. And I was thinking not in terms of allergies. I was thinking in terms of, well, they have to be friendly and okay. And she was. They worked with her with cats, but I don't know how much. And I do know dogs, just like people, the more you're exposed to an allergen, the worse it gets. So she was exposed too much. She showed up with it, and that was a huge surprise. So when you think about resources, you have to think about resources in terms of, well, what if you get a surprise $1,000 trip to the veterinarian? What happens then? You have to be prepared for that. And you also have to be flexible and be able to work and alert to things like she recently also, I gave her a treat that had beef in it or something, and she got what is essentially hives, and I had to take her back to the vet. So you just don't know, and you have to be ready for that kind of surprise when they happen. Okay, so what does a hearing dog do? You can train hearing dogs for multiple tasks. They're not the same tasks as you would get if you were mobility, if you needed for mobility reasons, if you were in a wheelchair and you needed a dog to help turn on the light switch or carry a trash bag or pick something from the floor. I don't need that. So they don't train them for that. But they do train them to alert to sounds, both generally in the environment, but specific sounds like alarm clocks and the doorbell or a door knock, to smoke alerts. I have trained her since. One of the wonderful things that Canine Companions does when they train you, when you go down for training with the dog, is they teach you how to train them yourself as well. So I have a tea kettle I cannot hear such a high frequency, but I have learned how to train her, and she has learned from me how to respond to the whistle of that tea kettle. There are other people who do. Somebody calls a name, calls my name. Say, for example, somebody called me from behind. I never heard them. She could respond to that, and how they do it. Again, she never barks. She does not bark, but except in her sleep, she has been known to bark in her sleep. So, but how she's trained is that she'll hear the sound and then she will lead me to the source of the sound. And then I give her a kibble and she's happy. And then that I know what happened. So I know that the doorbell rang, or I know that my tea kettle went off. So that is generally what happens. She'll nudge me when she comes to me. She never barks. She'll bump me with her nose. So that's what those are some of the basic skills. They do not do everything. They can't do everything. I would have loved, for example, when I was working, there was a bank of elevators. And I always did this thing. I cannot localize sound. I don't know which direction it's coming from. So I would love to have a dog tell me, okay, go to that elevator. But to do that, one of how you train them is persistence and repetition. See, over and over and over again. So when I was at work, I was working. I wasn't going to train her. And at home, I don't need it. But if you're in an environment where you can do that persistence and repetition and gradually lead her to it, it can be done. So that's really the good thing about this, is that you can expand the things you need if you need them. And she was very quick to pick up on the tea kettle and my alarm clock too, which was slightly different than the other sound of the timer that we got. So the other thing that you need to remember if you accept the responsibility of having partnering with a service dog is you have to keep up their training. It's not one and done. They don't, they'll lose it. They'll lose the ability to respond to a stimulus if you don't use that training over and over. So every day I'll have a time when I turn on every day is my tea kettle, and then separately I'll do the doorbell and I'll do a timer so that the dogs can remember how to get it done. And sign actually should have a little sign that says we'll work for Kibble. She's happy to do anything if Kibble's involved. Now a little bit about canine companions. This again was the organization I went to. They have been around for 50 years. They have a really nice reputation. When I took her, I was in Florida, and when I took her on the plane in Florida, one of the airport people came by and looked at her, and I was wondering what he was looking at. He was saying to his other airport staff person, he said, Canine Companions does a really good job. So they are known in some places. They have a training center in Florida. And I'll tell you some of in the next slide, some of the places they are, but that guy really knew. So this is what they are nationally. They're all over the country. They started in California, in fact, and now they have a training center in New York. So there's a Northeast Training Center in New York. And then they sent me during COVID, I went down to Florida for the training. Usually it's a 2-week training, but for COVID time, they had to shorten it. And we all wore masks with clear masks, but we wore masks when we were inside, outside, we could do it without masks, do our training pieces. But they have them again all over. And you'll see on this map, there are lots of dots beside these training centers, and those are chapters. The chapters, people talk to each other, ask questions, what's going on? I'm seeing this new behavior. Anybody else see it? That kind of thing. So they have Facebook pages to do that too. So those are ways that they get involved again all over the country. And these are how they train. They don't train guide dogs for the blind. And there may be other things as well. They train service dogs for mobility disabilities and hearing disabilities. And some also mental health disabilities if needed. They train facility dogs, service dogs for veterans. And therapy dogs is something new that you're just getting into. And they do a lot of research. You go to their website, which is canines.org, and they have all kinds of really interesting work that they've done. They don't do the research themselves. They partner with different universities to do the research. And sometimes they'll send some of their puppies and trainings up to the research facility. So it's fun to look at their website. They have lots of good information there. Now, I'm going to pause my sharing for a minute because while I know something about most of this, I know very little about service dogs or veterans. And we are lucky today to have someone here, Steve, I don't know how to pronounce your last name, so I'm going to let you do it, who will talk a little bit about veterans and how Canine Companions works with veterans. And Steve, you can just use the share and you should be able to show your 3 slides.
Okay, well, my name is Steve Sterry. I have a service or a hearing dog, just like Lise has, and her name is Xochi. I'm going to get her in here to introduce her. Xochi, here. Come on. Xochi, here. Xochi, my lap. Xochi, my lap. This is Xochi. And she is a pure lab. And just to give you a little bit of background, okay, on hearing dogs, there's some things that you didn't point out that might be helpful. Hearing dogs are trained right now with Canine Companions at Orlando, Florida, Oceanside, California, and Santa Rosa, California. And those are the three areas where the three locations where they train the hearing dogs. Xochi is my second hearing dog. I had a lab golden cross, and she passed away in 2022. And in July of that year, I got Xochi. And they give priority. There's something that people should know is they give priority to those people who have service dogs who need a replacement dog. And that's how I was able to get the second so quickly. It can take up to 3 years on a waiting list to get a service dog. Just for your information. So it's nothing that you can get right away. One other thing before I just go into just a brief talk about veterans is one thing that you need to do is if you have a service dog, you need to be very careful if you're going to Hawaii, because Hawaii has state laws that are accepted by the federal government that are a lot more stringent. Hawaii happens to be rabies free, and that's the reason why. And basically, if you go to Hawaii, the state of Hawaii at any point would have the right to put your dog into I'm trying to think of the word. Come on, help me.
Quarantine.
Quarantine. Yes, that's it. That's it. In quarantine. Okay, so I just have a really short thing. Let me tell you just a little bit about veterans. Okay, veterans get their dogs the same way as anybody who's a non-veteran. I am going to, by the way, before I go on, I'm going to put first of all, we have a meeting this afternoon. It's at it's at 5 o'clock our time, which is 8 o'clock your time, in which I will be doing a full-blown presentation on the veterans program, in which the veterans will actually pay for the medications and vet bills of your hearing dog if you are a disabled veteran. So I will be giving the full presentation there. I'm sending out a message to all of you that first of all tells you how to register for that meeting, and you can get in right away. And number two is my email address is also on the bottom. If you're a veteran and have any questions, please email me. Okay, I am a member of the virtual veterans chapter. We meet online once a month. Right now, our meetings are on the third Tuesdays of every month at 8 o'clock your time. And we talk about different things. Most of them are related to hearing loss with veterans. And so there's a lot of information that veterans can get. If you would like me to send you anything or just an invitation or whatever, go ahead and just you can email me at my email address, and I will reply so that I can set you up, let you know what we're going to be talking about, things like that. I kind of anticipate with the numbers that I see that there are a lot of veterans in your group. And by the way, I'm really impressed by the number of people that are attending. Okay, now I am going to share right now. Okay, I just lost it. Okay, let me go ahead and I'm going to start my presentation. Okay, can you see it? Okay.
Not yet.
Oh, it should be. Okay, let me try again then. It should be posted. Hold on. Okay.
That looks promising. It's sharing.
Okay. Now let me go ahead and open it.
We get that.
Okay, now you can see it.
Yes, we're all
Yes.
good.
Okay. All right. That's me. And that's my hearing dog coach. And this program that I'm talking about, the Service Dog Veterinary Health Insurance Benefit, is for veterans with physical disabilities or issues that are caused by mobility problems. Okay. It does not include PTSD dogs, nor does it cover dogs that are uh, um, uh, that are issued for mental health areas. Okay, it's just for physical disabilities or mobility issues. Okay, so it's administered by the VA Prosthetic Service, and it's the National VA Prosthetic Service. Every application is actually approved by the National VA Prosthetics Service. Okay, the service dog must be provided for hearing, guiding, for example, for the blind, or mobility, and must be obtained from specific nonprofit organizations. Okay, specifically, we're talking about organizations that basically are nonprofit organizations, and the VA has a list of them that they would give you. Okay, applications are made to the local VA prosthetic service departments, and I'm not going to go into how you apply for it and anything like that. If you're interested, then I will send you that information. But I just want to let you know just the basics. And benefits are restricted to services and medications that are prescribed by licensed veterinarians. And that would include things like prescription medicine, doctors, veterinarian appointments, and things like that. It also, by the way, would include, if recommended by a veteran, for euthanasia purposes. And I've been through that once with a hearing dog. She passed away in January, and the VA did reimburse me for the end of life expenses. Okay, and the way that the program works is they use a pet care credit card, and right now they're using Trupanion, and virtually as long as the vet recommends it, the VA will actually okay it. And most of the time, okay, you're given a card, a membership card, to the insurance organization, and you use that card to pay for the service. And that's pretty much it. There's a lot more, but I don't want to burden you with all of this. And again, if you have any questions, you've got my email address, and I really appreciate spending the time to talk with you. And let me return you.
Thank you, Stephen. So we'll go back to Lisa. Lisa, I'm not sure whether you're finished your formal presentation or if we should move on to questions.
Okay, can you see my screen now?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay, so thank you for that, Steve. That's really very helpful. I didn't know a lot of that, and I certainly could have used some of those benefits. I'm sorry I'm not a veteran now. I do want to say something about canine companions. They do train dogs for PSTD, so a post-traumatic stress disorder. So you can get a dog from canines and some other organizations that do help with PSTD, but what Steve was saying, and correct me if I'm wrong, Steve, but what he was saying was that it's not covered by these benefits. So it
Yes,
can happen. It's just that you're on your own unless you also have a mobility disability or hearing disability. Is that correct? Okay, great.
exactly. In fact, I had a lady that I came across. She had a canine companion that was given to her for PTSD purposes, and it took her 2 years because she hadn't met me 2 years to find out that the reason that her dog was being rejected by the VA was because it was recommended for her mental. And the VA right now does not recommend. We're
So
trying to
maybe
get
at
it
some
changed.
time. Yeah. Okay. So thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Steve. Okay, so I don't have too many more slides, but I do want to tell you a little bit about the process. Now, again, just canine companions. I don't know what others do. They may have a shorter process or a longer one. Um, but it seemed like a long time to me. So the application, you go online and there's a basic service dog request. So they ask you to look over the pages, read their FAQs, understand what you're asking for, and then you can put in a request. Then they have a telephone interview and medical reference forms and a personal interview. I actually went up to Long Island. There's a training center in Long Island for that. So you have to be there in person and they interview you. Then there's a selection review where they take all the information, and this takes months. And then if you qualify, if they find that you qualify, then there's an invitation to team training. Now, application process, the written application form takes 2 to 6 months. Once accepted, you have a wait time so that they form classes, so it isn't one-on-one. So they have to have enough in a class. So I think I had about 6 or 8 people in my class and dogs, and they have to have enough in the class and enough people that match for hearing. They were all people who needed a dog to serve their hearing loss. So they need to be able to make that happen, and it can take 20 months. They say no more than 20 months, give or take. It probably depends on who is available and what's going on. So it's another commitment. It's a commitment of time and patience and trying to and being sure that you're really, and during that time you can say, oh, this is not for me. That's fine. You can withdraw. But if you're gonna go through with it, just be prepared. It takes a while. Now, I also wanted to say, I've been mentioning throughout that there are other organizations. So there's Assistance Dogs International has listings of dogs throughout the country, in fact, in different countries as well. And I checked on for New York. New York, they list that is associated with them 42 different organizations that provide dogs for residents of New York. However, only 10 of those provide for hearing dogs. Well, 10 is still a good number. You can pick and choose from 10, but it's a much smaller branch of service dogs. So now we have questions. And I'm going to take down the slide. So here's my thank you slide. I have to say, what I really liked about this presentation is finding puppy pictures. So there's my last puppy picture for you. And I'll stop sharing and can take questions now.
We all like the puppy pictures too. So to ask questions, you should raise your hand. And the way to do that is to go down to the heart at the bottom where it says react. And the very bottom of the icons you'll see is raise hand. So does anyone have their hands raised? Yes. Okay. So we'll start with Arnold. I'm sorry if I can't quite read your name. Welber? Arnold.
It's Welber, Weber with an L.
Okay.
Lisa. Rather, Catherine. Lisa, you mentioned something about when you were showing it, maybe I haven't misunderstood that people that are visually impaired or blind, this doesn't refer to them with the.
No, I wasn't saying that people who are blind and use guide dogs are certainly covered by the Americans with Disabilities Act. What I was saying is that Canine Companions does not train dogs for people who are blind. There are many other organizations that will train guide dogs, just not Canine Companions.
Understood. Thank you.
Thank you. Carol, CJ?
How much hearing loss does one need to have? What's significant bilateral hearing loss as opposed to inadequately sufficient to qualify for a hearing dog?
Okay, so here's the thing about the Americans with Disabilities Act. It leaves it intentionally vague. It is supposed to be for people who feel impacted in their daily life in terms of hearing. So they never look at an audiogram, nor when I was working at Hearing Loss Association, we always fought anytime anybody said, oh, it should be somebody who has 60 dB down. No, I don't want to do that. And the reason for that is that somebody could have Meniere's disease, for example, that fluctuates. Somebody could have a hearing loss their whole life and cope and deal with their hearing loss very well, as opposed to somebody who had a sudden hearing loss overnight and they have the same hearing loss, but somebody is coping very poorly if they just had a sudden hearing loss. So no, it's not a dB level and you don't say it, but if it impacts your life, then you are covered under the Americans with Disabilities Act. And you can say that, and you can talk to somebody when you're looking for a hearing dog, that's what you say to them, is that this impacts my life. The hearing dog would make my life better by allowing me to be more responsive to the sounds in my environment that I would miss otherwise.
Great. Thank you very much.
Tony Acolucci. Tony, you're muted.
Thank you, Lisa, for another great presentation. And I too loved your PowerPoint. It was beautiful. And also thank you, Steve, for the information. I have two questions. I'll just put them out there and then you can answer, Lisa, however you like. First question is, how are the dogs with other people or other animals? For example, I live in New York City, and if I walk the dog, I would take the dog to a dog park and there would be lots of other dogs around. Or what if I were home and I was sick and I had to have a neighbor take the dog out and walk the dog for me? That's one question. Second one is more of a legal question. What if you have a dog and you suddenly have to go into independent or assisted living? Can you bring your dog? Maybe it depends on whether or not it's a private entity. So those are my questions. Thank you.
Okay, so I'll take the last one first. Under the Americans with Disabilities Act, you are allowed to have your dog with you regardless of the facility. Now, what I did when I live in an apartment, and I got from my Canine Companions a paper that said, this is a bona fide, it's a real service dog. Sent him the paper and he was fine. It was not a problem. The same thing would be for an assisted living place. They should not. In fact, many assisted living places have facility dogs now, so it shouldn't be a big deal. They should be able, but they're required under the law. That said, I always am aware of where you're going. So, for example, I said that I went to a hotel and I showed them my paperwork. I actually showed them the flight paperwork. there are some people or some places that don't want to have dogs around. I'm really sensitive about that. If I move and I'm looking for a new place, I'm looking at places that have rooms and they say no dogs, no pets. That does not mean I'm not allowed under the law, but it means that I would be real careful about wanting to be in a place that didn't want pets. So it's a balancing. You want to be covered under the law and you want your rights to be respected, but I'm always careful about where I go and what I do. So now you asked about, how does the dog respond to other dogs in the area? So here's the thing about labs, and Shine is actually a lab and a golden retriever mix. These are the friendliest dogs in the universe. Their reputation and how they act is, Shine would never hurt anybody. She might lick you to death, but she would never hurt anybody intentionally. I have never seen, she's also not an alpha dog. I've seen her with other dogs where she's the one, whoa, I'm backing off here. So labs are bred that way. So Canine Companions only uses labs, Goldens, and golden mixes. That's all they use. Other places use other dogs, and other dogs have been, canines started with corgis, which are very smart dogs, but they have now a relationship with somebody that raises lab and goldens. So they continue with that, and they're pretty successful. Now, that doesn't mean there aren't other dogs in the world that are aggressive. So I am very attuned when I walk Shine. I'm always attuned. I know there's this one dog in my neighborhood who I stay far away from. And actually, the pet parent also stays far away from others. It's a very aggressive dog. So you have to be careful. One thing Canine says, though, is they really say they don't like the idea of going to a dog park. And there's a couple of reasons for that. One is that you don't know if the dogs have been vaccinated. You don't know if they're just sick with the flu. When they're running amok, and you don't know if some of them are more aggressive. Every pet parent will tell you, oh, my pet's wonderful. And that, sometimes they're not. Mm-hmm. So it's if you would have a service animal in the city where you can't go walking around a park easily, well, we'd rather take a dog in Central Park or one of the other parks than take it to a dog park. Although my own son, who does have a pet, takes his dog to the pet park. Mm-hmm. But the issue is, to me, is you want to be careful. If you do take it to a pet park, what they advise is that you stand outside for a while. You look around and see how they're interacting with each other. That's helpful too. But the couple of times I've taken her to a dog park around here, hasn't really made me happy with them. So I'd be careful with that. But I would, again, our dogs are wonderful dogs. These labs are just delightful to be with, but they're big. So you have to think about where you are and what you can deal with. And, little dogs you can pick up too. So that's another issue with going to someplace other than Canine Companions, which might have other dogs available.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Lise Pastrana. And you were muted. Good. Okay.
Thank you so much for the presentation. It was really wonderful. And you had a lot of great information. My question is, does the organization, do you have to give the organization a donation, or do you have to pay a fee to get a service dog from the organization?
Oh, I didn't say anything about that. I'm glad you brought it up. These dogs cost $10,000 to $20,000 to train. You, as a person with a disability, don't pay anything to the organization. They get grants, they find donations, they fund the dogs. You don't have to do that. You pay for the dog once you have them. Again, all the veterinary fees and that kind of thing, that becomes your responsibility. But paying for the dog, no. You don't have to do that. Well, I will say this with canines, again, I don't know other organizations, but Canine says they essentially own the dog, even after it's in my care. So if I get hit by a truck, the dog could go back to canines. You might want to arrange different things in case you pass before the dog, but it essentially keeps ownership of the dog so that you keep contact with them every year is kind of the rationale behind that. They don't really want the dogs back because they're no doubt are older by that time anyway, and they're trained, they bonded to me, not to somebody else. But at any rate, the idea is that to answer your question briefly, no, you don't have to pay anything.
John Taylor.
Yeah, thank you. Not really a question. Lisa, I wanted to thank you. It was a wonderful presentation. I love the puppy pictures. And Steve, thanks to you also for your presentation and for your service. I would like to encourage the Veterans Organization to come to some of our other meetings. You can find information about our meetings on our website, which is hearinglossnyc.org. And we would be very happy to see, many of the veterans come to our meetings. So thank you.
Thank you, John. I don't see hands raised. I have a couple of questions. So while people think about what their next questions are going to be, what happens if you already have an animal in the household? You had a cat. What happens if you happen to have already had a dog?
It's the same. You have to alert them and let them know I have a dog. My guess is, although I didn't have this question, what is the dog's background? How old is the dog? But these dogs, as I say, there is no dog Shine does not like unless they're aggressive. She's happy to have dogs. In fact, when I was working, there was another person who also had a canine companion dog, and they fell in love with each other. They looked like twins. They were happy to be together. And there are times that I make play dates for them because those dogs I know are good. So it shouldn't be a problem if you have a dog, but you should alert them to let them know so that they're apprised of your situation.
Yeah, I mean, I'm asking because I know if I brought a dog into my household, the existing dog would not be happy. And I know that, but there might be other people who don't realize how, territorial or possessive the dog they already have is. So do they test in any way for that? Or do they ask you or?
Well, if your dog is possessive and aggressive.
He's not aggressive. He's just possessive.
It's just okay. So I have visited friends who have dogs that are very territorial, and Shine backs off, is what she does. She will not mess with a dog who feels like it's her territory. I think they might be hesitant. I mean, if you told them you had a territorial dog and you wanted to bring in a service dog, they might be a little bit hesitant or talk you through it. I'm just not sure, but I'm guessing they at least want to know.
Yeah, and as a follow-up to that, is there any way to have your own existing dog trained as a service dog?
I'm sorry, I'm catching up to captions here.
It's sort of a follow-up to what you just said. If you have a dog already and it's young and it seems teachable, are there any organizations that will train the dog that you already have?
I have not heard of any organization that doesn't. There are some independent trainers, but those trainers can cost a bundle. It can cost like $10,000. So it's possible, but not, I haven't seen it frequently.
Okay, thanks. Steve Starry?
Yeah, Starry. Okay, I've got a couple of things. You asked about training, okay, and finding somebody who's training. Okay, that's one thing that you can do is you can check the Assistance Dog International website and take a look at the organizations and see if they will do it. I don't know of any organizations, and they may be difficult to find, but that would be where I would check. First of all, the other thing is about bringing dogs into the house. We went through this when my my first when we went on vacation, okay, to my son who lives up in Oregon, and he had a black pit bull lab cross, and he was a bit shy about me bringing my service dog. That was Montera, my previous dog. But what we did, and this is what Canine Companions told us to do, is we took the dogs and introduced them outside the house. Okay. And when we did, then we brought them back to the house together. By that time, that evening, both dogs wound up in the same bed together. And that's the way you do it. As far as other animals are concerned, having other animals in the house, I can tell you this. My first wife, who passed away in 2002, she had multiple sclerosis, and we also had a canine companion dog for her. And we ended up with her, a pound puppy, and a cat. And by the time everything worked itself out, okay, we would have the two dogs sleeping on each side of us on the bed, and the cat sleeping above our heads. So that does work out. Okay, as hotel issues, things like that. Okay, the reason that I found out about your meeting was because of the fact that one of my contacts, and her name is Danette, and she's with Disability Rights Texas. And she emailed me about your meeting. Okay. I had a situation in Abilene, Texas, in which I had made my reservations with the hotel. The hotel actually, I let them know I was bringing her. And when I checked in, they would not allow me to check in. And so I had to find another hotel. And Disability Rights Texas helped me by filing action against the hotel. And the thing is they will never, ever again turn anybody away with a service dog. I can guarantee you that. Okay, as far as canine companions taking dogs back, my wife died while her service dog was 9 years old. And I called Canine Companions to let them know, and they gave me the choice of I could either take care of her and keep her as a pet, or they would find somebody to take the dog. So there's always somebody that's associated with Canine Companions that would love one of their dogs. In fact, Xochi's current puppy trainer and the dogs in there for the first year and a half or so, they're trained by volunteer puppy raisers. Okay, the wife of the puppy raiser, okay, was kind of hoping that Xochi would fail, because that would mean that she would be given first choice to have the dog. So yes, there's always a place for it. And as far as degree, your degree of disability, don't worry about that. What you do is you fill out the applications. Your doctor they will actually send you to your doctor with a list of questions, and they will decide basically on what you say and what your doctor says. And I don't think that most people that are in this organization are going to have any problems getting a hearing dog if they apply for it. Finally, Assistance Dogs International. That organization is one of the organizations that approve service dogs or the veterans program that I talked to. The veterans will approve any member of Assistance Dogs International to provide a dog that will be eligible for the program. Okay.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. Cheryl Kirkendall.
Yeah. Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, good. Thank you so much to the group for this program. It's so timely, and I appreciate each one of you. This is just awesome. Now I have a few questions. So, for Lisa, the legal questions that can be asked of you when you have a service dog. One is they can ask you if you have a disability, and I didn't catch the second question.
So the second thing they can ask is,
Right.
what tasks has the service animal been trained to do?
Okay, what tasks? Because one of my concerns is if you identify as hearing loss, then when you're in public, it poses a potential security issue. I don't, like, I wouldn't want people to be aware that I can't hear, can't hear them approaching or whatever. So, but if it's task specific, I mean, you can kind of say something more vague. I mean, how do you handle that with regards to?
So I have to say, walking around with a 60-pound lab, even though I know she's not aggressive, even though I know that she's a sweetheart, not everybody else knows that. So when I take her out, I have to admit, you can't tell, but I'm about 5 feet tall and
Okay.
I'm
Yeah.
not huge. So I would not walk in my neighborhood alone in the middle of the night, but with the dog or in a garage. Okay, so I'm in the suburbs. It's been a long time since I lived in New York City, but I feel more comfortable walking with her that
Yeah.
even if somebody asked me as I went into a restaurant, what is this dog trained for? I would feel comfortable telling them, knowing that I'm going to be walking out with the dog.
Okay.
Because
Okay.
I will tell you also, when I walk down the street, there are some people who are clearly afraid of the dog and will walk around me to not have to get too close. So, I understand you could have that. It's legitimate to ask that question, but I pulled the quote off the website I think that was under the ADA. If it's there, they're entitled to ask it. A museum is entitled to ask that. That doesn't mean they always will. When I go to restaurants, so in the DC area, they're really familiar with people with disabilities, and I have never had a problem in a restaurant. Again, there's this one problem with a museum, and I suspect, again, it was because somebody was trying to get away with bringing a pet in, so now they were really trying to be sure.
Right. Yeah.
Other than that, I don't know how to answer or reassure you.
Yeah, no, that's good. And clearly the whole service situation, it seems to be getting a little out of control. I mean, you just see, you go to the store and you just see, so that's a whole nother separate issue. But so my second question is, with canine companions, you say 20 months, and then you had mentioned 3 years. So, that's a little bit of a discrepancy. What is it, 20 months or?
Okay, so they say on their website 20 months, but
Okay.
it can be 3 years
Okay.
because as I said, sometimes training the dogs take a while. They have to get a group that trains. They will be training at the same time. There are some dogs that are be trained to try to be working with people with mobility disabilities. Some are trained with mental health disabilities. So they have to get that group together. It just takes time. So yeah, it's a discrepancy.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it is, it depends on when you land and when all your paperwork is done and then what they can pull together for a group.
Right. It's just, it's, it's kind of daunting because obviously when you feel the need for one, you want one like yesterday, right? And you're going, I'm looking at my age and I'm going, oh my gosh, 3 years, I'll be dead. I mean, not, but it's just, it's quite, it's like,
It's just this way. Now, this is Canine Companions. You can check. Like I said, there are 10 others. You're in New York?
I'm in Utah. I'm
you're
in
in Utah.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't know. You can check the website for the assistance dogs to find out how many are in there.
Yeah, I think I'm going to have to go out of state. I don't think there are any. And I've been conversing with another organization. I don't know if I can mention the name, but it doesn't matter. But and then liability with a service dog, a certified hearing. What is the liability? Does Canine Companions carry liability insurance when you take one of their dogs?
I don't know the answer to that question. It did not come up in training that I recall. I don't know. Steve, do you know the answer to that?
Yes. The answer is you are liable for the actions of your dog. In fact, you sign a waiver. The other thing is, okay, I would suggest anybody who's interested or even thinks they're interested apply right away.
Yeah.
Okay, because the thing is that if you apply right away, then maybe it's going to take you maybe 2 years until you're ready for one. And when they call you, because usually, well, in my particular case, I got my first dog within 2 years. Okay, and my second dog I got in 6 months.
Yeah.
So once you have a dog, you're put on priority.
Okay.
Okay, before for a successor service dog.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times too, what happens is they tell you this, but a lot of times what will happen is that they will be trying to get first people for a class, and they'll have trouble for one reason or another, and so they'll just go down the list. And it just so happens that my last dog, okay, that's what happened. They were trying to get people, and they went down the list. They couldn't find people, and they landed on me. And I said, okay.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. Wow.
Yeah. And the other thing is, okay, as far as being asked about, okay, being asked about your disability, the law does not. The law says they cannot ask you what your disability is. They ask you, okay, do you have a disability that this dog accommodates you?
Okay.
Okay, so it's against the law for them to ask what disability you have.
Okay.
So let me just say what I pulled off is the dog a service animal required because of a disability?
Okay.
Right.
So it's saying, is it required because of and then what is the task? So it's not saying, do you have to reveal your hearing loss? You have to reveal you have some kind of disability.
Right. Okay. Good. Okay.
Yeah. And what they're trying to find out too, what is the task? What do they do? What is their task? What is their task? What they're looking at is, does the dog do something for you? And what does that dog do? And the answer is, it alerts me to noises.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
That's the answer for a hearing dog.
Yeah. Okay.
A service dog may mean you might answer, the dog picks up things you drop.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, so those are the kinds of answers you don't have to go in to a long explanation.
Right. Yeah. 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 Because it's all so personal, really. It's also personal,
Yeah.
So when you, well, and Steve, I have to say while you're on the screen that thank you for your service. And my husband retired from the VA. He worked almost 40 years up in Oregon. And he ran a PTSD program for veterans. And so I know that this is a critical service that the VA is now offering, which is awesome. So,
Yeah, but it's funny because PTSD dogs are not approved for the reimbursement.
yeah, yeah, they've got work to do, don't they? I mean, the
They
VA
do.
has work to do. I mean, but so yeah, it's amazing. But thank you. So,
And
so
I want to mention that canine
Go ahead, look.
companions,
There's a
that what
couple.
happened was that the VA went out for bid for their first service dog program, and canine companions did not get the bid. 2 years later, they came back to canine companions and asked them to bid on it because the first person that got the contract, it didn't work.
oh,
And now
wow.
canine companions is working with the VA on that program.
Wow. Okay. Very cool. So, on,
Cheryl, I'm sorry, we have a couple more people waiting to ask questions, so could I
okay.
move you to the
I
back
know.
of the line for your last
That's
question?
great. That's great. Thank you. No problem.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Beth Alberti, and if you could also make yourself visible as well as unmuting yourself, that's very helpful to everybody.
Hi. Well, like everyone, I'm grateful for these presentations and making this available. My question is, in some ways, very simple. The examples of tasks have been, the tea kettle, the fire alarm, the smoke alarm, etc. Those tend to be interior domestic tasks, but obviously
Right.
I just liked what other ways, what other situations is the companion dog helpful? What are not even the tasks, but just how do you come to what do you come to depend on the dog to do for
Okay,
you?
so I can tell you for me, it's hugely helpful when I'm walking the dog for her to be alert to my surroundings. So my hearing loss is so significant when I walk around, I don't hear what's going on. I don't hear a car coming. I don't hear people passing by the bike. I mean, they're around. I hear the noise, but I don't know where it is. She will look and I will follow her. So that way, but that is different from being trained for a task because I can't train her to look at everything, every side. For example, one of the things I would have really loved is to have her tell me when there's a fire alert or, a fire truck or a cop or what direction, if she's in the car with me, hey, tell me where to look. The reason you can't do that, train them, is because you would have to do it over and over and over again. And you can't have a fire truck follow you around, right? So yes, she is helpful outside, just being a dog, just looking around, and I follow where she looks, and I feel much more comfortable walking around, I can tell you. But the tasks I train her for are, yes, domestic, with the exception if, for example, the example of calling your name. So if you had a spouse who would call your name when you're outside, and that dog was trained for it, you could train inside and then take that outside. That could happen. I'm on my own, so I don't get that. But you could train for dropping your keys, for example, and that dog could alert you, nudge you when you drop the keys and point you to the keys. So those are ways you can take it outside. But the tasks that I use are internal, and that's true.
Yeah. So, for example, I often can't find I don't hear my cell phone right away when it's ringing, or I don't know where it is.
Right.
And
you could train the dog to the sound of the cell phone. You could do that because it's a matter of repetition. It's a matter. So while you might to do the training, you put the cell phone in the same spot, put it off, and then there's a process you go through I won't do now. but you can train it.
Yeah.
And that could be something's in the house that you could do. That's a possibility. I haven't done it, but it's something that could be done.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, I just really wanted to hear more about what the dog helps you with.
Anything that's repeatable. So that's why internal house things are mostly what they do, is because you can repeat it. You could set up the same situation over and over again, and they can learn and they can do it because they respond really well to kibble.
Yes.
We're getting towards the end of this meeting, but we have 3 more people with their hands up, and I want to start with the person who hasn't asked a question yet, which is Nancy Gilbertson, and then we will go back to Cheryl, who I think has one more question, and Lizzie, who has one more question. So Nancy, you go first.
Hi, I just wanted to mention I have a canine companions hearing dog, and I taught him the siren, and I used siren sound off of an app on my phone, and I trained him that he would tap me on my leg 3 times, and that told that right away. Then I know it's a siren, and it only took twice that I had to do that with him, and he picked up on it. Canine companions are the awesome, highest bar, awesome, awesome dogs. And I just wanted to share that with you because I know how important it is. I wanted to be able to hear a siren, as well as I've taught him to alert me when I drop something, when something falls. So that's another thing that's not just inside the house. So I just wanted to put that out there, and thanks so much for having this tonight.
Thank you. Cheryl?
Okay, just real quick, on Canine Companions, you had mentioned about therapy dogs. So can a certified hearing dog be used as a therapy dog in like the hospital setting or autism or whatever? Can they do both things, like as a
Only if it's been trained to do both things. So I believe this just starting with therapy dogs. But for example, Shine has never been trained to be a therapy dog. She's just a hearing dog. I would need to probably, and I haven't investigated this, take them back to get training specifically for it, because each thing is separately. It takes time to train the dog. I assume it would be possible to do both, like be a therapy dog and a hearing dog, or facility dog and a hearing dog, but I don't know. I don't know that they do that. They may be more specific.
Okay. And there's no cost to the dog, but when you go to a training, the area to get your dog, then those expenses you incur, like hotel and whatever, however much time it takes.
Right. So I paid for my flight. I paid for the rental car, but they have dorms there, so you can stay there for the 2 weeks. But you tell them, some people don't like to stay in the dorm, and you can be in a motel, but you pay for it yourself in that case.
Okay, thank you again so much. This has been just a fabulous hour.
Lizzie, you get the last question.
It's not really a question, it's just a comment to Beth that was asking about what other tasking you train your dog, or what task dogs are trained, hearing dogs. I myself didn't know about organizations that how would I say, that you wouldn't have to pay thousands of dollars to get a dog trained. So I got me a toy poodle, and I got him the basic training, advanced, intermediate, and then I just bought books and just continued to train the dog. So as Lisa said, I train my dog to find my phone, because I'm always losing my phone, and when it rings, I can't hear it. And the other thing was finding my keys. So it's really repetition, and you have to work at it. And it doesn't mean that you have to spend hours and hours and hours. I do mine 10 minutes, 10 minutes a day, every day.
Mhm.
Okay. I think that's about all we have time for. I just want to say that our next meeting is on March 18th, the third Thursday, the third Tuesday, which is when our meetings always are. And the topic is cybersecurity, especially with people with hearing loss. So keep an eye out for email blasts telling you how to register. And I hope everyone will come back. I want to thank you, Lise. That was really just a wonderful presentation. And Steve, thank you for hearing about it and coming in to add a slightly different perspective. So thank you. I feel like there's somebody else I should thank. I guess I should just thank all of you for asking such good questions. So
Yeah.
We'll see you, as many of you are available, in March. Okay. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.